Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2024 week 5, January 29th to February 4th, and as you can see, we are back under the car doing a little bit of work on the exhaust. If I recall correctly, the last video ended with me welding this pipe all the way around, so now I am back under the car getting it installed. Now, what I didn't do is mark where the bottom was or where the top was. So putting this back in here, I'm just kind of guessing. I twist it around a bit, tighten it down, see where the pipe lands in the car, make sure it's not too tight to the body or too far away or too far left or right, etc., etc. And after some dicking around, I eventually get it to a place where I'm happy with. And going further, I can do one of two things. I can either just tack weld the pipe to the front. What is that? Oh, not a plate. It's a... I guess technically it's a plate. Yeah, so I could tack the pipe to the front plate there that the bolts are right up against, and then it wouldn't move. The alternative is I just mark on the pipe where it's down, and then that'll work. But for now, as you can see, I'm just spending a little bit of time just kind of playing with it and tightening it down. And also, as I tighten it down, it kind of pulls it up a little bit. So just playing with this, getting it into the right spot. Now that I got that back to where I think it was when I originally took it off, I can put the muffler back on and I can start kind of figuring out the rest of the exhaust, make sure it's all going to work still and it's not hitting things and it's not doing things I don't want it to do. So here I am undoing this because it wasn't quite where I wanted it. I think I'm finally pretty happy with this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working on permanently mounting this pipe to the car. And so I've got an exhaust hanger, so I'm just going to work on getting the exhaust hanger installed. So what that's going to take is I'm going to drill a hole up through the tunnel there. But before I drill a hole through the tunnel, I'm going to move this big bundle of wires out of the way. The very last thing that I would want to do is just punch a hole up through and drill into that bundle and make a mess of it, and that would just be very bad. So just get the bundle out of the way. I can mark, I can drill a hole, and then I can get a bolt in there. So I think I end up using like a 5/16 bolt and washer and all that good stuff. So what I'm going to do is throw the bolt in through the top. I'm going to go underneath. I'm going to put the hanger on. I'm going to put the nut on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten the nut down as much as I can. And then I'm going to kind of pinch or just kind of press the ratchet against the exhaust pipe. I'm just going to adjust the handle, press it against the exhaust pipe, lock it into place, and then go and tighten the bolt from inside the car. And with that, everything's tight. That hanger is in a good position. So now what I can do is grab the welder, weld the hanger to the pipe, and then that front pipe is done and good to go. well, almost good to go. I do still have like 6 inches of steel hanging down, which I don't want. So I grab the cutoff wheel, cut that off. I'll throw a grinding disc on there, just kind of round the end off a little bit, make it a little bit cleaner. But yeah, so that front pipe, I can now kind of build the rest of the exhaust because I know that's not going to move and shift on me. But yeah, so that part's done. And what I'm doing now is I am opening up some parts that I got from Summit Racing. So I got some lights for the inside. I got some actual light bulbs. And I got a few other things that I need to finish off the car. Or maybe I didn't get that second box. No, I would have gotten that second box. But in any case, just kind of taking a look at some of the parts. This is going to be my new interior lighting. So just checking the length, making sure it's what I need. And I'm just checking it out to see how bright it is. I think it's going to do exactly what I need it to do. But yeah, turn the lights in the shop off, turn it on. And you can see it lights up things fairly well. So good enough. So I'm just going through a few things here that I'm going to need for finishing off the car. I got some brake lines. I got some brake fluid, brake/clutch fluid. I got some water wetter for the radiator. I'm going to be doing some drag racing at some tracks this summer, and they don't allow coolant, so I got to use the water wetter. Some new reverse lights, and so I put the new reverse lights in, and I'm just testing them out because in theory they should be working, but I get nothing out of them. So time to do a little bit of troubleshooting and figure out what in the hell is going on. So grab a test light and see if I get power coming to the socket, and I got no power to the socket, so I got to figure out what's going on there. So let's quickly check the fuse. So we check the fuse. I think everything looks good on the fuse. Go underneath. Oh, maybe not. Still checking the fuse, I guess. So now I go underneath and I see that the socket's not connected, or I went underneath and I disconnected it just to check and make sure that it was working. But yeah, so back at the car, checking the socket has power now. So when I plug this in theory, that light should work, right? And what happened is the bulb fell out of the socket onto the ground, smashed the first bulb. So here's the second one. Okay, so it just doesn't work. I tested the light bulbs, they don't work for some reason, so I'm just continuing on. So we're going to install the brake line on the car. So I got a 90 coming off of that block, that distribution block, and I'm coming down to the line on the car. And this is exactly what I need. I can angle it perfectly. It's away from the suspension. Just check and make sure it's going to be away from the exhaust, and it is. So I'm just kind of playing with the exhaust here just to make sure that, the brake line is going to be clear, and I should have some room around the suspension and everything, and that, things are going to work just kind of how I want it to. So I'm going over to the other side. I want to kind of make sure that the exhaust is working on that side and doing what I want it to do on that side. And as I'm kind of moving around the muffler and stuff, I actually broke one of the welds at the front, or one of the tacks at the front. So I'm going to end up swinging back to the front. I'm going to re-tack that pipe because, yeah, it's where I want it to be. So I don't want it to fully break. So it's getting the welder set up, and yeah, I broke one of those tacks on there, so the pipe's a lot more loose than I want it. So just going to re-tack it. I get another good solid tack on there. All right, well, the exhaust isn't a huge deal, but what I want to do is, my plan is to get this car on the road as soon as I can. So in order to do that, I want to finish off the interior, the dash, the heating ducts, the clutch pedal, the brake master, get all of that stuff done. So I've 3D printed these vents that are going to go on the dash, and what I'm doing right now is I'm just grabbing some tape, and I'm going to put it on the dash vent, put it back on the dash, put the dash back in the car, and make sure that I have enough room behind the dash for all the venting and whatnot. So with the dash in the car, you'll see here in a second that I should have plenty of room in behind the dash to get the hoses on. I know that was really quick, but trust me, I got enough room. That's gonna work. So I couldn't get this reverse light not working off my mind. I thought it was the light bulb, so you know, maybe the socket wasn't touching the light bulb correctly. So I'm just doing a little bit more playing here, making sure it all works, testing it. It's really bothering me that it doesn't work. So taking the connector apart, testing it, making sure it's center pin positive, all that stuff. making sure that I got power coming to it and seeing if I get, you know, any voltage coming through it. I get voltage coming through it, but the light just doesn't work. So yeah, this light is just not working. Like you can see, I'm getting power through the light bulb, so it should be turning on, but it's not. Try another bulb, same thing. So I don't know if it's just a bad batch. I mean, I got these bulbs from Summit, so maybe they just, and you know, maybe they were just all in the same bad batch. I go so far as to touch the center of the light right on the positive terminal, take a ground wire and touch it to the outside, and that should light it up, and it doesn't. So for whatever reason, these lights just do not work. Maybe I don't know how the lights work. I don't know, but whatever. We're going to move on. I'll worry about those later. And so what this is those are the warning lights for my dash. I've got 4 warning lights, and I 3D printed a little piece that goes in the back that'll accept an LED light. So what I'm doing right now is just drilling all the holes in the 3D printed piece for that the LED lights will just press into and sit in. So I have a few different colors of LED lights. I've got red, yellow, and white. So what I'm doing is I'm testing a red light and a white light in the red lights. And I'm also testing a yellow light and a white light in the yellow ones. I just want to see what they look like, see what I like more, and just see what the color difference is. And here you can see it. So I believe it's going to be red, white, white, yellow, if I recall correctly, is how I set these up. So you'll actually get to see the difference in the colors. Yeah, so the bottom's yellow, and I like that better than the white. The white, it's kind of just, it didn't make it look orange. It made it, yeah, kind of washed it out. So what I end up doing is I use 2 reds and then 2 yellows, and that'll give me everything that I need. Now that I have the LEDs that I want, I can throw a DTM8 connector on there. So that's going to be 22 to 24 gauge, or sorry, 18 to 22 gauge, I think, and the smallest connector, and it's going to be an 8-pin because I got 4 positives and 4 grounds. So now that I've got that side done, I can actually go ahead and start doing the opposite side, like where all those wires come from the main harness in, and start getting it all tested out. So here what I'm doing is I am going to split the one power wire that's coming up. And what I'm thinking right now is I'm like, shit, I threw power up there, but I got no grounds to these things. And then I realized, wait, you're triggering all the LEDs with grounds off of the Holly or from the park brake. So I had a moment of relief there. I was like, oh, right, I don't need to worry about any grounds going to the LEDs. The grounds are triggered by my systems. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking this wire and I'm going to split it off into 4, and that'll be my power for all 4 of the LEDs. And then the 4 grounds coming from the Dominator / the park brake will go into the grounds in the appropriate locations. now that it's all wired, time to do a little tiny bit of cleanup here. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the harness and I'm realizing I got this power wire that's supposed to go to all my gauges, but the way it's wired right now, it's supposed to go into the main harness coming from the car. So that would mean that to pull out the dash, I'd have to like unpin it from the harness, and that doesn't make sense. So we take a quick little break and see Answer. Oh, she is my sweet gal. She is such a good puppy. So what I realized is that red wire should not come from this big main harness. I already have the small DTM for the Digi-TX. So what I should do is I should just move the power wire over to that, because that's coming from the same place on the dash. So what that allows me to do is I can pull this dash piece out without having to like unpin anything from the main harness. It's going to work out a lot better. And so now I just need to do the opposite on here, which is cut it short, put a pin on it, put it in that connector, and then, you know, it just makes everything so much easier. All I got to do is disconnect the big connector, disconnect the little 2-pin connector, and then I can pull that entire dash piece out again. Super nice, super convenient. All right, so now we are going to move over to other things. The dash is kind of done, and I noticed that the caster camber plate is actually pushed right up against the cap of the brake master cylinder. That's not a good thing. So I was like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack this up. This wheel is very has a ton of camber, so it's like angled in. So I'm going to jack it up, let the wheel loose, undo the caster camber plates, and just kind of pull the wheel out a bunch. And I didn't even pull it out enough, but it's enough that it's off the master cylinder. Again, I'm just checking it with a level, and it's still way off. Like, I still need to jack it up and pull some more camber out of it. But whatever, for now it's good enough. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull the master cylinder off the car. Alright, so now that the master cylinder is off the car, what I'm going to do is go onto the inside, and I'm going to loosen off the pedal box. Or am I going to tighten it up? What am I doing here? I don't even remember. Doing something to the pedal box in any case. To the bolt on the pedal box. Yeah, it looks like I'm taking it off here. So I quickly try and pull the booster out, but I realize it's hitting the clutch, so I can't pull it out. So, and I mean, that's okay. But what I'm doing there is I'm pulling the pin off, and that's for the brake switch. So the way this works is you've got the brake switch, which kind of sandwiches around the rod coming out of the brake booster. So you gotta kind of play around with it a bit, and you know, in super tight quarters, so I'm trying to get you a good video of it. But I'm just kind of playing, getting that brake switch sandwiched around the rod, and then getting it on the brake pedal. And then I put the pin back up and in, and that's my brake switch installed and working. It's actually, it was actually very simple and very nice, very easy to do. So what I'm doing here is I'm just tightening up all of the nuts that hold the brake box or the pedal box on. Some of these nuts are just up in such hard to get to areas. It's quite a challenge sometimes. kind of a shitty angle here, but what I'm doing is I'm just unscrewing the air conditioner brake switch. I don't need it, or the cruise control brake switch, because I don't need it. I'm not going to have cruise control, so I'm not going to need to disable cruise control via the brake switch in any way. So I confirmed that the brake switch is working, at least sounds like it's engaging. So now what I'm doing is I am going to start bleeding the master cylinder. So I'm just grabbing some cardboard because I want to put the master in the vise, and I don't want the metal jaws to clamp directly onto the base. But one thing that I got to do first is this master doesn't actually fit on this brake booster. So that's a 93 Cobra brake booster, and this is a master for 87 to 93, not necessarily a Cobra. So I just taken that carbide burr on the drill, and I am just elongating the mounting holes a little bit just so it fits onto the booster properly. And with a little tiny bit of adjustment, yeah, it goes on there and sits flush as I would expect it, and no problems now. Now that it's mounted on the car properly, I can bleed this thing. So I bought a Willwood bleeding kit, and these are right ports, or right side ports. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fittings, put them into both ports, take the caps off, take the rubber boots out of the master. I'm going to attach a couple of clear hoses from the fittings up into the reservoirs. I'm going to fill the reservoirs with fluid, and then I started out using a punch, but it was very uncomfortable in my hand, so I switched over to a big screwdriver. But I'm going to work the big screwdriver into where the brake pedal would normally go. I'm going to make sure that I get, start with nice long strokes, and then I will switch up to a combination of long and short strokes, both all the way deep and then some shallow. And I'm watching the fluid as it comes out of those clear tubes and into the reservoir. I'm just waiting until there's no more air bubbles coming out, and this does take a fair amount of time. I was quite surprised, but that's the process, and we're just gonna watch it happen. So it did take a while, but we got to a point where all of the bubbles were out of the fluid. So now I am just working on getting the fittings disconnected. And what happened was, as soon as I disconnected the fitting, this master just started leaking tons of fluid. I could not believe how much fluid was coming out of this. Like, it's a continual drip. And, at this point I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, like, my brand new master is pooched because it's just, pissing fluid out. So I ended up calling a good friend, and, he reminded me, it's like, you've heard of gravity bleeding your brakes? I said, yeah. He said, well, that's exactly what it is. You crack the bleeders, and then, you know, the fluid will just flow out on its own without needing any assistance. So it is common for fluid to exit the master cylinder. So fortunately my master isn't screwed like I initially panicked and thought it might be. It should be just fine. So what I do is when I got the calipers, and I think even the master, it came with some plugs with O-rings. So fortunately I was smart enough to keep them. So I find them. I just do I think I do a quick rebleed on this because I was leaking some fluid. Or maybe I don't. I just take them out and I put the little fittings in, and I do that on both ports, and then I do a little bit of cleanup on the bench because I pissed brake fluid over everything. And with that, I can put the master back on the car. So unfortunately, I can't bleed the brakes yet because I need to get a fitting for the bottom of the proportioning valve. I'm going to have to get that direct from Bear because I think I lost one, unfortunately. So we're going to wire the brake switch. I installed it, so now it's time to wire it. So that's the original brake switch harness, and I'm not able to extract the pins out of it. I try, but I just can't. So what I end up doing is I just take a couple of regular spade terminals, and I make sure I got enough heat shrink on them that it's not going to ground out and cause a short, and that's all it's really needed for it. Alright, with that pinned and connected, I'm just going to connect the harnesses on the on the steering column, because all of it goes through the steering column. So I'm just hitting the brakes, and you could just kind of see on the wall that the brake lights were lighting up, but I took you to the back just to show you. So now that the brakes are all installed, I was feeling the clutch pedal, and the clutch is just super stiff. It's not returning like it should. It's just not a good feeling. And I remember that when I initially installed the hydraulic clutch, there was a bit of a clearance issue between the pedal and the new hydraulic clutch. So I got to undo everything that I just did. Pull the master back out, pull the pedal box, like undo all the bolts for the pedal box, even though it took me a bunch of time to get it in. It is what it is, you know. Past Ben was a lazy fuck, and so he completely screwed today Ben by not clearancing that pedal when I was installing the hydraulic clutch. I vaguely recall when I was doing it, I was like, oh, I'll do that later, like I'll address that issue later. Well, later is now, and because I didn't do it then, I got to take apart like 20 minutes worth of work that I just did. So, fuck you, past Ben. You lazy bastard. Just do it right next time. So yeah, so you're going to see me take apart everything that I just put together. This time I also need to undo the clutch linkage because I need to pull the entire pedal box out so I can modify it. So fortunately that was just one bolt there, and then after disconnecting the clutch switch, drop the column, I can kind of work this and get it out of there. So yeah, it kind of sucks that I got it all together and then had to take it all back apart, but that's working on vehicles. It's, you know, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back sometimes. Sometimes it's 1 step forward, 17 steps back. But whatever. We're going to get there. It's not a big deal. All it is I just need to grind the corners of this clutch pedal down, and then that should give us all the clearance that we need. If I recall correctly, I only needed to do the backside, but I was like, you know what? The front side's got a big sharp corner there too. I can round that, make it look the same. It's not going to affect the performance of the clutch pedal, so let's just do it. Because if I put this pedal box back in and for some reason that starts rubbing, I'll be choked that I had it all out and I didn't just do it. So yeah, let's just get this going. And now you get to watch me struggle putting everything back in. Put the put the pedal box back in, get it all bolted up. Of course, putting this back in is a lot more finicky than it was pulling it out. But yeah, then, you know, Got to redo the brake switch. Got to redo all 4 bolts on the pedal box. Yeah, we're just going to put it all back together. So yeah, just tested the pedal there, and yeah, it feels great. It goes all the way to the floor. It releases all the way. I think it's perfect. So what I'm going to do now is on that clutch linkage, there's actually 3 Allen, well, there's that Allen bolt that I'm tightening right now, and then there's 2 set screws. One to fasten the linkage to the pedal, and then there was a second one somewhere else. I don't really remember. But yeah, so it's very tight quarters. It's very hard to get in there. So I'm just kind of getting you the best shot that I can. So now that the clutch pedal's back on, I'm going to put the master back on. But before I do that, because I had it tipped on its side, I'm not 100% sure if it's still going to be fully bled. So I'm just going to very quickly rebleed it because it's not going to hurt anything to do that. quickly rebled, we'll just throw it back on the car. And with that back on the car, we'll throw this brake switch in. So kind of showing you a different angle as to how I put it in. As I said, it sandwiches the rod, so I kind of put it on either side of the rod, then slide it onto the clutch pedal. So I start tightening up the column, and then I realize, well, if I'm putting the dash back in this, I can't have the steering column all the way up because the dash will never clear it. I need to have this drop down a little bit. So I just loosen off all the nuts and just kind of drop it back down a bit. Alright, so earlier in the video, I checked the clearance on these vents and it was fine. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to actually install these. So I'm going to trace out around them. I'm going to drill some holes, and then I'm going to use some RTV sealant with a couple of nuts and bolts just to hold these on. I'm using my Dremel for this because I don't really have a better tool to use. It's a rotary tool. It'll cut this plastic like nothing, and then I can kind of clean up the edges with one of the bits. So this one I completely fucked up. I cut out too much, and so I don't have a great mounting surface, so I'm not putting all 4 bolts in this, which is okay. I'm sealing it with RTV sealant, so that'll kind of suck it down and almost glue it to the plastic anyways. But yeah, so I got to kind of put this to the... You'll see in a second that I'm not within the lines. I'm kind of far back. But that's just the way it goes. I know it's kind of hard to see, but I'm, probably a 1/4 inch back from where I drew the outline, and the whole hole will be sealed. It's not a big deal, but it wasn't great. So while I'm letting the first one kind of set up here a little bit, I'm going to grab my second vent, and because it's 3D printed with some supports, I just need to bust all the supports out of it and just kind of generally clean it up because there's a lot of crap in there. So just doing the same thing with this one, only I'm only doing 2 holes, one on either side. Cut it out. I'm going to RTV seal it down. And the last thing to do is to put this block off plate on here. So again, I'll put some sealant around it, 4 bolts, bolt that down, and then that should be the heater box done. We can get it mounted in the car. But that is all the time that we have for this video. So as always, if you have stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.